this is Cheri at djsundry.blogspot.com, and today we are going to talk more deeply about sketches. Now, this video does not have a project. I really want to take the time to really go through and give you ideas. Because this is a 101 class, I really feel like that there are some tips and things just by looking at a book such as this that you can learn. And then I want to talk more about other places where you can go to get ideas. Now come back throughout the rest of the month. I will be posting at least one scrapbook and at least one card layout, maybe not more than that, but again using sketches and some of the ideas that we're going to talk about today. So I believe that most of you purchased the Close to My Heart, Make It From Your Heart Volume 1. And if you didn't, that's okay. I love this for a 101 class because it gives us so many little hints. And if you're like me and sometimes you need to get the creative juice going, or you have trouble understanding size and different relationships like that, as I do, and color, both of those, then I'm hoping that you will find this video very helpful. And then also that from this you can just use this as a springboard to just expand your own creativity. Now when I look at a picture such as this, sometimes I look at that and go, oh, that's really cute, but I don't have any pictures like that. What would I ever do with that layout? Well, that's when we talk about sketches just being a springboard. Now, I am not going to start at the very beginning of this book. I am actually going to have you come over and turn to layout on, I believe it's page 17. I should have marked it. I mean layout 17, yes. So it's layout pattern 17 and it's on page 39. And the reason why I wanted to start here, this is that cute little girl from the front of the catalog, or of the front of the pattern book. But I wanted to talk about what they're talking about in this little box right here. And it talks about now presenting, and it talks about starting your scrapbook page. Now, if you are able to go back chronologically, which I love, all of my old scrapbooks are pretty chronological. I have, you know, like from the kids when they were born, and it just like you would be walking through a baby book or something like that. It's just my when I ran out of time to scrapbook and I put it aside for life and then for school and then for new jobs, that really kind of fell apart. So now sometimes when I'm doing layouts, I'm just grabbing pictures and putting them together. However, I have another project going on where I've started a book just for my husband, and those photos are all chronological. When that happens, it's really fun to have a good start, and that's what this is talking about. How do we start our books? Now, if you were to look in my old books, when I was first learning how to scrapbook, a lot of things are kind of crazy in there, but one of the things that I've tried to do is each year, depending on what I'm doing, you can do it so many different ways, but each year I would have a title page so that you can see exactly where I'm going with the book. So for example, you could do it if you had a child, you could start at the first year of life. So you might not want to put 2017 in the book, you might want to put year number 1, and then on the first birthday, then you're starting year number 2. And so that first birthday may be either the ending of your scrapbook or the beginning, or the ending of that section or the beginning of a new section, however you wanted to do it. And that's what this is about. There are no rules. I, however, like to have things as chronological as possible. I like to see that progression of ages and sizes. So for me, I like to have, when I've ended one year, then I start another year. And perhaps at the end of the video, I'll pull out some of those old pages and kind of show you some of my beginning of the year layouts. Now, other people may say you were doing a book about a vacation. Well, then you might want to have that first page that is a title page about your vacation. Maybe you went to Disneyland and you've never been to Disneyland before. So your book might, instead of this happy girl, you might have a picture of you at the front of Disneyland. And that would be your page. So however it is, it just gives a nice introduction to the book. When you purchase a book at the store, does it always just start in the book? No, you usually have some sort of title page, and so that's what this is about. Typically on a title page, you probably don't want a lot of photos. For instance, you see in both of these, they have one large photo, and that's kind of their title page. Now you maybe could, if you started the title page and then you wanted to do like a year in pictures, and so you wanted to have like a few random pictures throughout the year, you could do that as well for your title page. Something like, oh, there was a fun one back here that would be fun. You could do something like this for a title page. Maybe choose one of these and then have several different little snapshots, whatever it is to pull the interest into the book. So this is what we're talking about, having a title page. Now typically, like any front page, you're not going to have a two-page spread of this, because your front page, no matter how you open a book, this front page is all that's there. Yes, you might have cover where you can take advantage to write on it, but in your scrapbooks, you're not going to have that. So you're going to have some front at some point. So that works really well. So now let's talk about some of the other tips and hints that you can get from a book like this and from other different resources. Throughout our books, we have little hints here, and this one's just talking about using vertical columns, but how that you can easily turn them for horizontal pictures if you don't have vertical pictures. So again, when we did our last scrapbooking sketch time, we talked about turning the book and looking at the sketch in a different direction, and there's a really good example of this. In fact, this is the example that I was kind of thinking we were going to make, and then they illustrated the example clearly in the story, and that's this, or in the book. This layout, I was looking at this and I thought, that's really fun. I bet I could turn that and make it go the other way. And lo and behold, when I looked over here, look, the original layout was turned the other way. So we see here we have the vertical stripes here. Well, here they were horizontal stripes cut in a banner cut. So then where we had a vertical picture, a 7x5 picture here, now we have a 5x7 picture, and our title is still underneath it, so it's still bringing that eye to it. So we've just turned it to do what we need to do, and turning that can really change the way your layouts look. If you were looking at this layout versus this layout in the same book, now you might catch on to it if they were next to each other, but if they were spread out in the book, you would never even realize that this is the exact same layout turned a different way. It's just a fun way to do it. The next thing I want you to notice is on our vertical layout, this is sometimes a little bit hard to visualize because you just see strips of paper and you don't see what's going on with those strips of paper. And if you're looking for very minimalistic or clean lines, then this is one way that you can do that. But look what it does to dress it up just by doing something as little as cutting that little dovetail or banner shape. It just adds that little bit of a different dimension to it. In this particular two-page spread, if I look at it closely, they actually turned both of these on point. So because you had your grouping of photos going down the side here, where across you had them going here. So if you're turning one, you may find that you need to turn them both to achieve the balance that you need, because if you're doing a two-page spread, those two pages are designed to work with each other and to balance each other out. And so if you don't turn one, it may not look quite right. So kind of play with it a little bit. The other beautiful thing about that is you can kind of play with your pieces and see how they look before you ever glue them down. Now, the trick to that is knowing which photos to use, because if you're turning it on sides, as I mentioned, this one's going to be a 7x5 photo versus a 5x7 photo. Yes, they're the exact same, but they're turned differently. So, but you can still use, if you love this vertical layout, but you only have a horizontal picture, then play with it, turn it on point, or turn it on edge and see if that helps. So that's another excellent point that they point out here. Another thing that they talked about, well, I don't know if this doesn't talk about it, but this is an interesting thing too, is changing your shapes. Now, in the last layout we looked at, they were pretty clean lines, except for all they did is just cut that little banner cut in it. But just because your sketch has squares on it, or rectangles, or circles, it doesn't mean that your layout has to. Look how they took these squares and turned them into circles right here. Now these actually look like they were cut with a punch or a Cricut or something. I know I have Cricut shapes that I can do that. Maybe it was a Cuttlebug shape. I'm not sure how they did that. But this was actually a scallop circle that gave dimension, and I'm pretty sure that was probably a Cricut. And then they put a circle picture in there. But it just adds a little bit of interest, you know. We don't have to have all squares and rectangles to add interest. So play with it. Would another shape look better for the photos that you have? And don't be afraid that everything has to look just like your sketch, because you're just using the sketch as a springboard. By giving us the nice clean lines of a sketch with the nice squares and the nice rectangles, then we are told, or we can see, oh wait, I can change that and give it the circles. And the next thing that I want to point out to you is when you're looking at a sketch, such as this one, we see a box here that says title 9 by 2 3/4. Now you could cut a box and do whatever you wanted to, whether put letters or whatever to make your title. But that is just kind of giving you an idea of the size of the dimensions, because if you look over here, there's no box there. There's this nice little strip of paper that provides a break that clearly defines that this is your title going on here, but it's definitely not a box here. And just that takes me to the next tip, is just because this had a box right here and then it was blank here. Now if you had the perfect pattern paper and you didn't want to mess with it, then that's great, don't mess with it. But what if you have a solid or a very fine print and it just looks empty and bare? Just because it's bare here doesn't mean it needs to be. Look, they just added a few stickers or flowers or something like that. And so it really is, like I have said over and over again, it's just a springboard to use what you want to do. Going back to this example page that we used, and they talk about this on another page. I don't believe they do on this particular page, but this is also showing the same principle as of changing squares into circles. Well, add a little bit of interest by changing a square. The photo mat here at the bottom is no longer square. It's actually a mat with curves in it, and it just adds a little bit more interest. Now you're probably looking at that and you're going, how in the world would I do that? Well, if you have a template that you could cut out and then trace, that's one way. Most likely those shapes here and here, those were most likely cut on a Cricut, and there are lots of Cricut cartridges. Now of course I love the Close to My Heart Cricut cartridge, and if you haven't heard me say it before, I'll say it now. My all-time favorite Cricut cartridge, it has actually been discontinued because it was the original one, and I absolutely loved that. And if I had could only have one Cricut cartridge, that would probably be the one I want, and this shape may or may not be in there. So again, use the tools that you have. If you don't have a Cricut, you don't have to have a Cricut. Find a pattern of something, print it, and then cut it out and use it as your print, as your pattern, so that you can go with that. So there are some key elements to a good scrapbook, and one of those things is what we talked about at the beginning of the video, and that is having a title page. Now this one actually gives examples of 4 title pages or pictures. They just have 2 patterns, but they have 4 pictures, so it kind of gives you a springboard. Again, applying some of those principles we've already talked about of changing the shape, turning things on point. So, you know, the original one here, you've got your photo here, which pretty much mimics what they did down here, but if you notice, basically what they did is they turned it upside down and moved the photo over to be able to get this cute little girl's picture. So a good scrapbook has a nice title page on it. Here's another one that they show us, and it's, you see how they've turned it on end and changed things around. Could you have turned it this way and changed it? Quite possibly. You could have, and it would have ended up being something really fun. So try that. Turn it on the other side. If you have a horizontal picture instead of a vertical picture, turn it, just like what we've been talking about. So a good scrapbook has a good title page. A good scrapbook page also has a title on it. Now, a title doesn't have to be like the title of a book, but it can be something simply as sweet. Doesn't that word sweet define this whole page? It defines the little girl in the photos, but then they carry that theme throughout the whole page with the whimsical butterflies flying, the soft colors of the papers that they chose, the dimensional but still fun flowers. So they all tie into that. If the photos were not on this page that says Wedded Bliss, if I took those out, you would know at a glance what this page was going to be about. Now in this particular instance, you would probably, you could use this as a single page layout, but you could also use this as a great title page for your wedding album. You would know that at a glance. So, but when you put the pictures in, you've got your words and your titles working together to portray what you're trying to communicate to the ones that you want to show your book to. So a good title page goes a long way, but a good title on your scrapbook page goes a long way. So I want you to start thinking about what am I trying to portray with this scrapbook page. In last month's sketch, let me just pull that because I've got it right here still. This one, and this was a very simple layout, and I think that to me what this says is my family makes me happy. This is my happy place. And so that's what I'm trying to portray to those who are looking at the page. So that page it shows all of that. And you know, that one could easily be my title page for 2016, because that was early January 2016, and so that could even be a theme for that whole section of my book if I chose for it to be, or it can just stand alone as a layout. So play with your sketches. We are going to continue this month with not a new challenge. I'm not challenging you to do anything new. I'm challenging you to do more. I want you to keep using those sketches, play with those sketches, and then as the month goes on, we will come back with more. I will come back and bring some card sketches to you, and I will also come back and bring some, at least one if not two more scrapbook pages using sketches. So come back soon, and then I want to see what you're making using sketches as well. Have a great day. Bye.